Known for the sweetness and creaminess of the drink and the chewiness of the tapioca pearls, boba has taken the world by storm. But if I asked you where it came from, would you know? In fact, I wasn't too sure myself before making this video. However, boba comes from Taiwan, where texture is a crucial part of their cuisine. This makes sense as texture is one of the most appealing parts of boba, with the creamy and chewy texture I mentioned earlier. Tapioca had been served with dessert as a topping, but not in tea until 1986, where two different tea houses in Taiwan decided to try and add tapioca pearls into iced tea. This idea was first a hit in Taiwan, but it didn't take long for it to become one of the most well-known sweet beverages in the whole world. Food is around us every day, but most people are often unaware of the cultural background of the foods they consume. This is a problem with most cultures, but is particularly prevalent in Asian foods today. Why Asian foods? The roots of this problem are entangled way back during the peak of Asian American immigration. Asian American immigrants have varying backgrounds. Two main examples: refugees and immigrants. A lot of immigrants from Southeast Asia came as refugees to the Vietnam War. As these refugees fled to the United States, they had nothing and needed to somehow establish themselves into society. An example of this integration can be seen in Cambodian donut shops. On the west coast of the United States, there are a plethora of donut shops that have Cambodian owners. According to the article, Cambodian Donut Shops and the Negotiation of Identity in Los Angeles by Aaron M. Curtis, it all started with Ted Ngoy and his family, Cambodian refugees who fell in love with donuts. Ted saved up a lot of money and bought several donut shops and started selling them to Cambodian refugees who were looking for jobs and financial stability. Because donuts were already enjoyed by the American people, this plan worked and allowed Cambodian refugees to attain financial stability. However, this caused a loss of culture as Cambodian refugees have inserted themselves into an American culture while leaving their own behind. Because of the urgency of financial stability, Cambodians couldn't establish their own restaurants and wait for Americans to accept their culture. Instead, they had to make something that Americans have already accepted, and for Cambodians, this came in the form of donuts. Even when Asian American immigrants who weren't refugees make dishes from their own cuisine, they end up being slightly tweaked in order to better suit the American taste. For example, in the article Chop Suey Syndrome, Americanizing the Exotic, Molly O'Neill states that, quote, when faced with new ingredients, as well as the prevailing taste and current economics of their adopted countries, first-generation cooks adapt, quote. This adaptation leads to hybrid dishes such as chop suey from Chinese cuisine, coal oven pizzas from Italian cuisine, nachos from Mexican cuisine, and California rolls from Japanese cuisine. This proves how authenticity and culture is lost when first-generation cooks come to America as they feel the need to establish their food in a place with a distinctly different palate than their own. Overall, the desire for financial stability for Asian Americans after immigration leads to a lack of culture transfer, as it was easier to leave it behind and integrate into American culture to obtain financial stability.
Many Asian cuisines were modified by immigrants, and it gained lots of popularity, especially in the United States. However, since these increased popularity in Asian cuisines came at the expense of cultural authenticity, these groupings of Asian culture and traditions came with it. Asia contains hundreds of distinct cultures, cuisines, and history. Yet, American food culture often simplifies them into one broad label: Asian food. When these foods become popular in mainstream markets, they are frequently marketed this way, which erases the cultural differences between Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, Filipino, Thai, and many other different kinds of cuisines. Grocery stores, for example, often illustrate this problem clearly. In many of these large supermarkets, there's only one small Asian food aisle or section, despite the enormous diversity of ingredients and cooking traditions across Asian culture. This grouping suggests that all these foods belong to one interchangeable category rather than separate cultural traditions. One of these sources that we saw in class, Crying in H Mart by Michelle's Honor, highlights how meaningful these authentic ingredients can be for people in the Asian diaspora. In the book, Zahner describes visiting Korean groceries stores like the H Mart and feeling an emotional connection to these foods that remind her of family, culture, and identity. These foods represent memories, traditions, and heritage that can't be replaced. When mainstream American stores only carry a limited section and selection of Asian ingredients, it reflects how these Asian cultures are often reduced to a few simplified items. The contrast between the richness of an H-Mart grocery store, for example, and the tiny Asian food shelf in many of these supermarkets demonstrates how commodification can lessen cultural complexity. Commodification, for example, happens when cultural items such as food are turned into trendy products that can be sold, marketed, and consumed without recognition of their cultural meaning or history. One clear example of this can be seen in the rise of bubble tea, or what is best known as boba, on social media platforms like TikTok. As boba originated in Taiwan, is deeply tied to Asian immigrant communities and their identities. One source that we found was from Digit Magazine article, Resisting Food Colonialism, Boba, TikTok, and Cultural Appropriation. It explains that boba is not just merely a drink, but a cultural symbol, an identity marker of Asian immigrant communities in the West. However, as the drink has become globally popular, a phenomenon, it has increasingly been repackaged as just a trendy aesthetic product and often separated from its cultural origins. Social media plays a major role in this process. Platforms like TikTok, food trends spread quickly and are often recreated by influencers who focus on appearance and viral appearance rather than just cultural context. These appeals, like boba drinks, are frequently presented as colorful, customizable beverages or cute drinks to film online. While this exposure may increase visibility for Asian foods, it also contributes to what the article calls food colonialism, where cultural foods are extracted from the communities that created them and turned into profitable trends in mainstream culture. This process reflects a larger pattern in which Asian cuisines are appreciated primarily for their novelty, while the histories and identities that connect them are overlooked. Another issue that arises from this commodification is the grouping together of many Asian cultures in a single category.
With the rise of boba's popularity on social media, boba is no longer only grouped as an Asian beverage, but has been integrated into American popular culture. On social media like TikTok and Instagram, many videos about boba focus mainly on the surface level, such as the taste or appearance of the drink. As video mentioned before, boba originally comes from Taiwan and represents an important part of Asian culture, but on social media, it is often regarded simply as a global trend. The enthusiasm for boba does not necessarily represent Asian food and its originators. It actually reflects how people imagine themselves when they try exotic food. For some people, they might think, oh, I like drinking boba or eating exotic food, so I'm very inclusive and I'm a global citizen. The boba trend becomes a way for people from different backgrounds to present themselves and show off a kind of cultural capital. Fame states that the boba case study is only part of a broader trend of food colonialism, reinventing ethnic foods to fit Western standards and profiting off of it. This means that food from minority cultures is often reshaped and promoted in a way that caters to Western customers, where its real cultural meaning is changed or neglected. But this situation is not only shown in boba. Matcha is another example of it. Matcha originally comes from tea traditions in China during the Tang and Song dynasties, but it was later brought to Japan in the 12th century. Over time, it became an important part of Japanese tea ceremony culture. In the article, Food from Nowhere, Complicated Cultural Food Colonialism to Understand Matcha as Superfood by Nick, the article argues that in the United States, the way people talk about and consume matcha has already lost its original cultural context. People no longer view it as a drink related to Chinese or Japanese culture, but instead promoted it as a healthy superfood. In Western consumerist culture, minority cultural foods can easily be transformed into fashionable items. In the United States, matcha is often labeled as a healthy drink and a part of positive lifestyle, while boba is often tagged as fashion and a way to show inclusiveness. However, these labels simplify the meaning of these foods. The cultures behind them are rarely mentioned, and only the visual symbols of these foods are shared on social media. This phenomenon can also be explained by the concept of racial formation, proposed by Michael and Howard. They argue that race is shaped by social and historical factors, and meaning changes in different social environments. Today, social media is also part of these social factors. Social media is not only a form of entertainment, but also a way for people to speak up, get knowledge, and get informations. When social media presents Asian food as a popular trend, while the culture related to the Asian American is removed, this can gradually affect how audience understand Asian culture and the people connected to it.
Now, why is this all problematic? Well, when culture is erased from foods, for example, in boba, it also removes the authenticity aspect of it. And for many Asian Americans, in this authenticity, they can find their own identity and community in these items. As Justin Sprague says in his article, Ghost in the Kitchen, Multiracial Korean Americans Redefining Cultural Authenticity, he basically states that food becomes an integral part of the identity formation process. He explains, for example, Koreans eating and cooking Korean foods together creates an authentic bond not only with each other and their family, but to their Korean culture. When eating these foods that are tied to their culture, they can feel connected to it. Food is an important avenue to help create an identity for themselves. There's special value with these foods, and when you remove these special values, meaning its culture, it then removes that avenue of connection. This same phenomenon can be seen in boba. With its rising popularity, its acknowledgement of its origins are becoming lost. Yes, not everyone will always know the context and origins of all the foods they eat, but boba is something that we can take a look at. It has become so popular that it's not only being diminished to a simple trend, its importance as a whole to the Taiwanese and Asian community is being stolen and repurposed into a drink that's simply meant to be shown off and trendy. Another problem with this hyperpopularization is that it can lead into a major consequence of consumerism, which is an increase in prices. This problem is exemplified by what's happening in many Chinatowns. In the article Upscaling Authenticity, Asian American Food Gentrification in Chinatown by Erica Maria Chung, she explains the concept of food gentrification. She explains how certain ethnic foods become such high status cultural symbols that their traditional consumers can no longer afford to eat them. This happens because when certain cultural foods are put on such a high pedestal, their popularity increases, and along with that, so does demand. And with higher demand, that naturally means higher prices can be put onto these foods. I mean, look at these prices of boba in the 2010s. They're around $3 to $4. Very cheap in today's standards. Now, this is a menu of a local boba shop here in Davis. It averages around $7. When prices increase for beloved foods like boba, it naturally creates a higher barrier of access for people. Less and less people can start to afford it. And that's not good for inclusivity, especially for Asian Americans. As I mentioned before, when there are barriers for access for these cultural foods, their ability to find identity and community with their food is lessened. To reiterate what's been mentioned in this video, Asian Americans have often abandoned or modified their culture to better fit the American culture around them. Sometimes this even means having to modify their own food. Boba is a big example of this. Boba is getting commodified, its origins are getting lost. And this is only being aided by social media, where boba is being seen as a trend. It's good that Asian food is becoming popular nowadays, as it used to be looked at as something unappetizing to the general populace. However, when it becomes too popular in the case of boba, and its origins are forgotten, it removes an avenue of community and identity. It is important that we do not forget its origins so that we can always remember the hard work that's been put into the making of these certain foods and cuisines.